Guys, so we'll make a start. So we'll start up at the basket end, we'll work our way back to around the machine till we get to the lower control box. Okay. You see, we have the control box up here, with the Hall effect drive joystick and the lift slew joystick. The anti-entrapment system on this is just a solid steel bar, and inside we have a telemechanic switch either side that if you push it forward, it's pressed, it stops the function. To reset it, just take your foot off the pedal and put it back on. It will leave it as a fault description on the fault history, but it won't stay there as an alarm, it's just there as evidence that it happened, okay? The load cell, so we said it's a voltage type cell. You can see in here, it's a 2 output one. You have the channel 1 and the channel 2 outputs from the load cell there, okay? As we were saying, we mentioned, was looking at the steering, every single cylinder is dust protected, okay? So we have this sort of plastic thing you can take off with the Jubilee clips and unzip it if there's ever a need to. If it's been ripped or damaged, you want to remove it, replace it, or clean it and repair it, you can put it back on. The idea being is it keeps a lot of dust and debris and sand out of the end cap, and it should result in less damages to seals as the machine gets older. The only grease points on the boom assembly are these 4 here for the platform mounts. And then we also have the greasing underneath on the worm box for the slew bearing, okay? If you look underneath at the actual slew ring, that is also dust protected. The slew ring is on the inside, encapsulated in the cast that covers it, okay? So that prevents more debris, sand, grit and stones getting in there and accelerating the wear on the slew bearing, okay? All the greasing points are on the left-hand side. Okay, you can see as well the leveling cylinder is protected. The only one that isn't, but it's protected by the boom, is the tele cylinder. Inside, obviously, there's not going to be one of these on that. But on the primary boom lift cylinder, the master cylinder, the slave cylinder, and the steer cylinders, everything is protected, okay? We come around this side here. Here we have the Euro Stage 5 Kubota engine, okay? It's a 37 kilowatt engine, okay? On some of our scissor lifts, on the 1623 rough terrain diesel, we can supply it so it doesn't need DPF treatment because we put a smaller underpowered 3-cylinder 18.2 kilowatt engine in there. It still has enough power to operate the machine correctly, but all the boom lifts come with Stage 5, okay? So that means we have the DPF after treatment, as we explained in the presentation. Level 0 being that no regeneration is required. Once the ash load gets to 50%, it goes into Stage 1, which is parking regeneration. If you ignore that and use the prohibit switch for more than 30-40 minutes, it'll go into Stage 2, and it'll only allow you to bring the machine down, and then you can drive at slow speed, operate the jib and the slew. And then after that, we'll go to Stage 3, which is an automatic, what we call driving regeneration, okay? You can undo the bolt here, the mounting bolt, so this engine tray is swung, it comes out almost to 90 degrees, so you can easily access your oil filters, your fuel filters. With this being slightly different to the non-Stage 5 Kubota engines, this is electronic fuel ignition, okay? So it's not just pressure ignition on a pump, okay? It's electronic pumped ignition, okay? So, here in the front we have the oscillating axle, okay? It works similar to similar models. The axle, when the machine is in the transport position, is floating, is free to oscillate. But if we park the machine in a work site where the axle is out of level, once we come out of the transport position, the axle is locked, okay? So that means if we slew around to the side, we continue to drive, you may see that one wheel is still in the air depending on the orientation of the boom, okay? So the axle locks out using these 2 cylinders here and the check valves to hold them in place, okay? The steering assembly is completely grease free. There's no need for lubrication for the kingpins and bushes, okay? And around this side, the main fuel tank. If for any reason the machine has been run low on fuel and it started to draw air into the system, as well as the electronic pump, we can prime the filter using the manual pump on top of the filter housing, okay? Hydraulic oil tank. In Europe, the machines we export from China, they come across with CL32 viscosity oil, okay? Here we have the auxiliary 12-volt emergency pump. Okay, it's quite a small pump. ZOOMLION's recommendation in the operator's manual is that you do not operate more than one boom function at a time when using the emergency pump, because it is only a small pump. If the pump is ever overloaded and too many functions are used at once, it can result in the main fuse, because you have the main power cable for the contactor for the emergency lowering pump is connected directly to the battery. The fuse is actually located on the battery positive post. So if you take off the cover of the battery, you'll see where the cable comes from the auxiliary motor, and there's a small glass fuse that actually sits on the battery stud and connects on there. Okay, it's a 250 amp fuse. So if you lose the power to the auxiliary contactor on the live side, the common side, you need to go to the positive terminal on the battery post and check the condition of that fuse. Okay. Hydraulic manifold. Okay, everything's on here except your drive functions. Okay, so you have everything from lift up and down, main boom, tower boom, telescope, platform level functions, steer functions, and jib and cage rotate functions. Okay, there is an extra valve block you'll see on many boom models over here. The reason for this, wherever it is, it's over there, this side. Okay, this is to differentiate between jib and platform rotate. Many models of articulated and telescopic boom lifts have this. It's just to save the amount of pipes you need running up the power track, because the less pipes and cables you have in the power track, there's less likely to be abrasion and rubbing and damage inside on the cables and the hoses. So we have two common feed hoses, feed and a return coming from the bottom, and we use this valve block to differentiate between the rotate functions and the jib functions, and it's done through the electronics in the top box. Okay, so the display. As I've said, it's really important when you turn on the machine not to just turn the power on and just start the engine straight away. Okay, because if you do that, there's not enough time for the engine ECU to communicate back, and it can result in the engine being stuck at idle speed. Okay, so it's always as a rule of thumb, when we turn the machine on, you'll hear the fuel pump, the priming pump coming into work. Wait until you see the ZOOMLION before you start the engine. Okay, and that's it. It gives it enough time to do its system check. So this is the main home screen. Okay, gives you various information, so you can see straight away that the machine is actually in the stowed position. I can see that the primary boom is elevated maybe sort of 15 centimeters, but it's still below the switch. You can see the angle of the boom. You can see the fuel level. If this was a battery machine, that would be a battery level rather than a fuel level. Okay. Here we can see the x-axis of the chassis along with the y-axis of the chassis. Okay. When this light is flashing green, that means that everything is good and the machine is not reporting any current faults. If that was flashing red, the word fault would actually turn, the font would turn to red, okay, and you would press this and it would list the current fault there in the screen. We can look at historical faults, okay, so there's been various things. Some of them can be to do with it. You'll get faults appearing if you try to start the engine too fast. Lots of DT, things not done in time, CAN bus fault. So if I start the engine too fast, you'll get this one here. We've had low fuel alarms. So this one's not had too many, okay? Low fuel alarm, you can see the date and the time and when that occurred. Okay, we go back to the home. Regeneration status. So we can see that the ash load in the filter is 0 at the minute, 0%, and the regeneration is 0. And that's the objective. Whenever it gets to regeneration stage 1, the ash loading will be approximately 50%, and the idea is to do a parking regeneration straight away. So to do the parking regeneration, we need to put the machine in a safe area where there's going to be no risk of fire because of the heat of the exhaust. And we need to make sure that this prohibition switch is in the down position, and then I can press this switch up to request a regeneration. Okay? So other things that we have, if we go into the main menu, one of the first things we'll see is system monitor. This is really useful for diagnosing faults, okay? Because in here we can look at the input monitor and the output monitor. So the input monitor is the first page. Wherever there's a green light illuminated, that means that we're getting an input. So we can see straight away that the ground mode switch is illuminated, and we can see that the key switch is ground, okay? We can also see that we're in the transport position. If I was to telescope the machine out a few inches, that would go into the working position. Or likewise, if I turn the key to the right, that would go into the platform mode. Okay. We can look at various other inputs. So for example, jib switch up. If I was to press it from here or the platform, you get the light. Jib switch down, we get the light. Main boom up, light comes on. Main boom down, light comes on. Okay, swing, light, swing right, light. Okay, so really, really useful for checking. You can do this from the platform also, and you can still operate this unit completely, whether the machine is turned to ground or to platform. This display is not interested which position. As long as there's power to it, you can access it. Okay, go page down, we can see various other things. Really useful again for diagnostics. We can see the position and status of limit switches, okay, as well as sensors, anti-crush bars, various sensors on the engine, such as temperature sensors, air filter sensors, okay. And then there's a little bit more information about boom angles and platform loads. So if we come back out of there, we can also check the output monitor, okay. So we have all the same functions listed that we do on the input monitor, but whenever we select a function, we can see the amount of milliamps going to that valve, okay. So we know we're getting an input, now we're getting an output, okay. Other things in the menu, we have the history fault, which we've already looked at, info service. This is useful if you're contacting us and you've got a question or a query about a machine, you've got a fault. We may be very interested to know what controller version it's got. This has got the most latest up-to-date version. It's got some extra details in there that were requested by Mateco. So this is 2.1.14. So if you are contacting us with a fault, maybe we might ask you to send us a picture of this screen so we know exactly what version of software the machine's got. So that's just an information page. Okay, basic time and date settings. GPS for locking and unlocking. Now parameter manager, okay. This is the part of the machine where we need a random code. You can access one of these codes by contacting ZOOMLION or speaking with your regional service manager. Okay, and we can generate a password with the password tool. So I input the password 13593, and then I get a random code of 57325. So I can input that code 57325. 2, 5. Okay. Oh, I must have typed it wrong. We'll type a new one in. So 71629 gives me 61878. What the fuck? Am I typing it in wrong? You might have to do some editing here. 3, 8, 6, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 4, 5. Okay, now we're in. Okay, so now we're in the parameter management page, okay? If this was an electric machine, underneath valve parameters, you would say motor pump parameters. But obviously this doesn't have a motor pump parameter because it's a diesel machine. So the two that we're interested in is valve parameters and calibration. If I was to enter calibration now, I'd have to enter a separate password for that. But first we'll look at valve parameters, okay? So the red message is just to say you've successfully entered that menu, okay? So page 1 of 8, drive parameters, okay? So you see here we can adjust the acceleration times and deceleration times. This value is set in milliseconds, not milliamps, because this is the timed value. So the acceleration time from me pushing the joystick to something actually happening and the wheels moving is 4,000 milliseconds, okay? And stopping is slightly quicker because that's just only 2,000 milliseconds, okay? Forward working current and reverse working current, okay? Sounds a little bit unusual, that, because this is only to do with drive. So if we look now at forward max drive, that's 1,490, and reverse max drive or max current is 1,340. But the working current is 850 and 850, so that means the maximum drive speed when you're in the working position, so when it's out of the transport position. So that's why that's lower. So whenever you see working current, that means it's current when it's out of the transport position, okay? We can also set the minimum current times, which is when the machine is switched to slow speed drive. The maximum current we get then is 790 and 790. And we can also set the creep current drive, because when you switch the boom speed control into creep, that can also affect the drive system as well as the boom system. Okay, so if we can scroll down using the page up and page down buttons, now we're into swing parameters. Again, you can see the acceleration and deceleration times. Now, what's different on every page other than drive, because you can operate all functions except drive from the ground controls. So we need to be able to independently adjust the speed of the maximum current from the ground controls for every function. So for swing parameters, wherever you see a G next to max current left and max current right, that means from the ground controls, from the swing here. Where you see left max current and right max current without the G, that means it's from the platform. Okay, so if it says the G, it's from here. If there's no G, it's talking about the platform. Okay, so you can see here, if we page down, we have the tower lifting parameters, exactly the same format. Boom lifting parameters, the same. Boom telescope parameters, jib lifting parameters, and rotating parameters, and then gauge level parameters. Okay, so this is how we fine tune the acceleration, deceleration times, maximum, minimum, and creep currents for all boom and drive functions. Okay, so now we'll go into the calibration menu to see what we can do in there. So I generate a different password, 20685 51881. Okay, so you can see now we've entered the calibration menu. Okay, so in here, the first menu option is page 1 of 7, which is the weight sensor. Okay, we only ever calibrate and zero the channel 1 weight and the channel 2 weight. We do not adjust and set the K values. Okay, they should always be between 0.9 and 1.1, which we can see that they are. Okay, if we want to clear the channel, we want to do the calibration and clear the 0 channel 1 and channel 2 weights, we just need to make sure that the platform empty and the platform is level, which I can see that it is at the minute. So to clear the channel 1 weight, we press and hold the left key for 3 seconds, release, parameter set successfully. Now this was already 0.0, so you don't see a change. When I press and hold the right key, you will see this will change from 0.5 to 0.0. Hold for 3 seconds, release, now that's gone to 0, parameter set successfully. So that is the cage recalibrated. Okay, we've got the 2 green lights on and the 2 zeros, and that's that done. Other things that we can calibrate is the drive joystick. Okay, Hall effect joystick, the center position being 2500 millivolts. In reverse, it drops down to 500 millivolts, and in the forward position, the reverse position, 4500 millivolts. So you need someone in the platform to operate the machine, operate the joystick forward and backward. You don't need to actually be driving the machine, it can just be done with the ignition on. And we can use the left key, the right key, and the up key to set them values respectively. It's the exact same process for the boom lift joystick and for the swing joystick, which is part of the same joystick, the dual axis joystick, and the function speed knob. Okay, now there are some special parameters. This is usually only available on the debugger, the handheld device, but this is something Mateco asked for us to put on so we could change other certain special types of parameters within the system. Okay, so that's the display. Okay, as we've been through in the classroom, you can see how we operate. The main use for it is valve parameters and calibration. The only time when we need the debugger, the handheld device, okay, the way we connect it, we turn the power off, we take out this clip here and we unscrew the plug and we plug it into the debugger, the handheld device. Okay, and remembering to press the 2 buttons when we power it on so we can select the model that we're working on. And the only times you're going to need to use this is if we're doing chassis angle calibration, platform level calibration, boom angle calibration, or boom length calibration. Okay, any questions?